Welcome to the Thornton Review.
The show designed with you in mind. If it's important to you, it's important to us.
We want to thank our sponsors, Ida Gates Trademark T-shirts, Next Door Real Estate Photography, and First National Title Insurance Company. On today's show, we're going to meet Kevin Stevens. I first met Kevin at ECUA. Kevin was elected on the board in 2020 while I was serving on the Citizens Advisory Committee. Today, we're going to talk about some of the changes that have occurred at ECUA since Kevin first came on the board. But first, we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we'll learn more about Kevin and some of the projects going on at ECUA. There is no government-funded program that can guide a man's thoughts. Only God can do that. Kevin Stevens is a Pensacola native who graduated from Pine Forest High School. He attended PJC, UWF, and UCT and majored in political science and international studies. He served in the U.S. Navy and went to ISA school as an intelligence specialist. Kevin Stevens is a businessman who has owned several successful companies and is currently the elected District 5 board member for the Emerald Coast Utilities Authority. Kevin is a proponent of transparency and accountability in local government, as well as collaborating with the city and county to prioritize the needs of the community as a whole. So Kevin, welcome to the show. It's great
Thanks
to have you.
Thanks for having me.
So you're the third person from ECUA we've had on the show.
Okay.
And so that tells you something about how important we think the ECUA is, because it is the most important utility. Safe drinking water is vital to life.
Absolutely.
And we know that the ECUA board ensures that or ECUA as a whole, everybody working there ensures that we have clean, safe drinking water. So we want to thank you for that.
Absolutely. Yeah, happy to do it.
Yeah. So in 2020, you were elected to ECUA. That's when you and I first met. I was on the Citizens Advisory Committee at the time. But right before that, I think right before you were elected, ECUA hired a new executive director and attorney.
Correct.
So there have been some changes since then in transparency and accountability to the community. And so I was wondering if you could update us on some of the changes that have gone on at ECUA since you came on the board.
Sure. So, yeah, I mean, tremendous amount of changes because, as you just alluded to, we have a new director, Bruce Woody, great guy. I can't say enough good about him.
He's been on the show also.
Oh, yeah, good, very knowledgeable. And then, of course, Robert Beasley and his firm are now our new attorney. So, and then, of course, shortly after myself, and then, of course, board member Larry Williams. So it's just been quite a bit of change. I mean, you have new director, new attorney, two new board members. So a lot. When I first got on, obviously, I think like maybe most newly elected, this is officials or politicians. This is my first elected position. So I had this big book and all these notes and these changes I was going to make. And then, of course, I ran during the controversy with the previous director and attorney at the time.
I was there at every meeting.
Yes.
I know all too well.
And so I'm just getting worked up. I'm just thinking, goodness gracious, what type of organization is this? What am I getting myself into? It was just kind of but I had all these notes that I had taken, and I was like, look, I work at a finance company, so I oversee tens of millions of dollars of budgets. So I thought, before I ran, I spoke to my wife about it, and of course got her blessing, and she was awesome to help me through the campaign. But I said, can I add value to this organization? Because if I can't add value to the organization, I kind of looked at that as if same thing. I look on my business in the private sector, then I want to do it, and I thought, well. I'm good. I'm a finance guy, so in my day job. I look at P&Ls and balance sheets and debt flow schedules and so forth, and I do forecasting on financials. And if things don't make sense or there's too much redundancy or inefficiencies, that's what I do. And so I make non-profitable companies profitable. So I thought, wow, I can take that skill set, goodness gracious, take it to ECUA and thumb through their financials and so forth. So that was what I felt that I could bring to the table. And then almost 4 years into it, I think that skill set has done us well. But some changes. I mean, like I said, in addition to the staff, I remember sitting down for one of our first. We have an outside accounting agency, and that speaking of transparency and accountability, literally and figuratively, we have an accounting firm that we contract with. ECUA does that does our books. So basically audits us inside and out. So, and I remember sitting down with and listening to the presentation. It was a long presentation. I always tell folks, if you ever have trouble sleeping, I'll forward you a copy, which you're online, of all of ECUA's financials. And you can sit there and just go through them to the point of nausea,
You'll be
right?
asleep in 5 minutes.
But I remember I was just going through it, and listening to them. And one of the accountants came down, and what stuck out to me were like bonds and so forth. So it's like, what are we paying for bonds? And so that was kind of that was something that kind of blared off the page to me. Is when ECUA funds a lot of our projects with bonds, with bond money, and we're borrowing money. Well, 10 years ago, it was a lot more expensive borrowing money 10 years ago than it was, say, a year ago or 2 years ago. So, just looking at some of those 8 or 10% and seeing how we could renegotiate some of those bonds and take advantage of the low interest rates at the time, not as much now, but a couple years ago. So I felt I had some value there looking at some of the financials. Just going through what inefficiencies, that we had and redundancies, and looking and going through the different departments. We've got, like I said, back to the newly elected or newly appointed, I should say, director, Mr. Woody. He does a great job of that. I mean, and that's basically what staff does. The other thing was, I ran on the accountability and transparency. I always have to correct people because, I had an individual at a town hall. I go to all the District 5 town halls, some of the other districts as well, but I make a point to go to the town hall meetings and speak to residents and address any concerns they have as it relates to water, sewer, or garbage, or ECUA in general. But I remember an individual saying, well, Kevin, you said you'd never raise rates. And I said, well, in the age of cell phones.
Say that?
Yeah, I did not. I said, hopefully someone's got cell phone footage of that.
Right.
I said, because if you had the cell phone footage, I'm sure it's out there somewhere, right? You would have said, I answered the question this way. I will look at any inefficiencies. I will look at any waste within ECUA. I will make a concerted effort to eliminate that, reduce that, make sure we're running a tight ship. We will take care of our house first. If after I've done all that with the assistance of the other board members and staff, and a rate increase is still justified, then I will do that. So that was the actual statement, because to go in there and say you're never going to raise rates.
It's I don't think any board member has ever said that.
No, you can't.
No,
I mean, you can't. And I wasn't foolish nor naive enough when I came on board to look at that. But I'll tell you what is surprising to me, and to this very day, is how many people think ECUA is a private company like FPL or Gulf Power used to be, right? It's amazing because that people think we're a for-profit organization when in fact we're a not-for-profit. We're a public utility. Any profits we make obviously go back, to running the operations of ECUA,
which is a lot.
It's a ton. It is,
and people don't realize there's 5 departments in ECUA, and every single thing that goes into each department is incredible. I mean, the incredible amount.
I explain to people. I can remember knocking on doors and during my campaign, and which was awesome because I got to meet people face to face and get those concerns. But that people thought we were for profit. You guys are making so much money and you're shareholders. I'm like, sir, ma'am, you're a shareholder. I'm a shareholder.
Kevin, bringing up finances. Take something like the county or city government, and then you compare that to ECUA utility. I know with the county and the city, a lot of it is government. Some of it is government funded, as well as coming from the tax base. How does that work as far as ECUA, is there anything there that's government funded? What's the difference in those financial?
Yeah, so
structure?
that's a great question, Charles. So we just recently applied for several grants. So we do get subsidies, we do get federal and state grants to offset that. So anytime we get that money, that's just less money for the ratepayer. Case in point, my grandfather used to say, the more hooks you got in the water, the more opportunity you got to catch a fish.
Right.
So we applied for multiple grants recently. And we were expecting to get one or two federal grants, and we ended up getting three to five various grants, and to the tune of almost $11 million. And so that was federal.
That sounds like a lot of money, but the amount of money that it
Oh,
takes to upkeep
absolutely.
and to fix damages and to replace the garbage trucks and just the computer
Oh, yeah, and upgrade
system
our
with
sewer
everything.
lines.
$11 million sounds like a lot of money, but when you're looking at ECUA and that budget,
Sure.
it's really not.
Well, here's the catch. And so, again, ignorance on my end, definition, learning, again, there's a lot of things in every aspect of ECUA I'd love to know, probably should know as an elected official, but honestly, it's a massive organization.
You'll know it by the time you're term limited.
Right. Yes. Yeah, sure. But so we're all excited. I mean, Bruce Woody, the director, brought us the board. Hey, good news, ladies and gentlemen. We got these grants, $11 million. Here's the catch. There always seems to be a catch. The catch was we have to match it. So these were $11 million of matching money. So
Sure.
it's like, free money, not free money. I mean, it helps Escambia County, right? Because it's state and it's federal money, so it didn't necessarily come all from the ratepayers of Escambia County. But we have to match that. So now we've got to find in our budget, and we just don't have $11 million laying around.
Right.
We've got to find $11 million to match that. If we don't match that, we lose it.
Okay.
So-
Is it our
I was going to say if you only can match 5, do you get to keep 5?
Yes, correct.
up
Yeah,
to
correct.
whatever
correct.
you
It's
match.
not 11 million or nothing. Yes, we can
And
whatever.
is that 11 million, which would be 22 million, is
Correct.
that already accounted for? Like, what project is that going to go to?
We do not have all those. We have
Okay.
lots of, every board member has
And of
their
course
pet
you'll have to
projects
decide.
and so forth, and we'll vote on where,
Yeah.
where we're going to, most of it's obviously going to be septic sewer conversion. We do have some of that. I can tell you one project, which only just because we voted on it last year, was Brownsville. So a lot of that's going to go to the Brownsville community for septic sewer conversion. So that I know. The rest of it, we're still, be honest with you, we're still trying to raise the match. I mean, we're still trying to figure out where we're going to get this because we don't want to give any of it back because, like you said,
Right.
it's $11 million of not necessarily free money; it's taxpayer money, but it's the best buy one get one at the supermarket you can get, right? So we want to utilize all of that money. So, but some of that has been allotted. And like I said, back to septic sewer conversion, there are a lot of federal grants. There's some in the legislation that was passed at the federal level, legislation that was passed at the state level that is very directed at septic to sewer conversion. So you'll hear that a lot. You heard it a lot last year. You're going to hear it even more this year and the years beyond is getting that. And there's a lot of Triumph funds. There's just tremendous amounts of funding for that. It boggles my mind when we talk about grants and federal funding and where we're getting our money. And as you alluded to, Pichelle, which you're correct, $11 million sounds like a lot of money to me and you. And let's face it, it is a lot of money.
It is, yeah.
But when you're talking about infrastructure, I mean, yes, garbage trucks
Hundreds
are
of
expensive.
millions of dollars.
Hundreds of millions of dollars to upgrade septic
Yeah.
and sewer. And it sounds, I feel like when I'm sitting there on the board and I'm voting on these $1 million contracts to award, to upgrade, I mean, all of a sudden I'll get thrown a curveball for a $2 million emergency project on Scenic Highway or something that, that the 16-inch, sewer mains busted twice.
If everything was going smoothly, if there were never any busted sewer mains, if there were never any garbage trucks that tipped over, if there was, never all that needed maintenance and the needed repairs, then everything would go smoothly. You wouldn't have
Oh,
to.
sure. But with all that, we're kind of going back on where our money comes. Majority of our money, as you all know, come from us,
The
and
ratepayers.
you, and the ratepayers, and so I'm very cognizant of that. I remember the first time we made it a year or so without having to do a rate increase, and then the following year, the COVID, the rest of it, we ended up voting on a rate increase, and I mean, goodness gracious, I think cumulatively, don't quote me on this exact figure, but I think it ended up being between water and water, sewer, garbage, it was like $3.50. And oh my gosh, at the emails I got.
A couple
Yeah.
questions. One is on the grants. When we go out and seek these grants, who are we competing against? Do we have
Every
competitive?
municipality we're competing against when we're going out there for grants. I mean, there are certain state and federal set aside dollars that are used for. I keep going back to the septic sewer conversions, and so they have a block of money that is allotted. And I mean, that is passed at the state or federal level legislation. So once that money's gone, it's gone, right?
Okay.
Kind of like the PPP that a lot of businesses took advantage of. And
So that is a competitive.
It is. It's competitive and almost and in some it's always competitive. In a lot of cases, it's a first come first serve. So once the money's gone, it's gone. The legislation has been passed to allot in this legislative bill, Florida, whatever, X amount of dollars for that, and then everybody in the state, right, is competing for those dollars.
One more. You don't have to answer this one right now.
Sure.
You can think about it a while. I would love to know what are our biggest. What is our largest expense, and maybe we have a couple of them at ECUA. But
Our biggest one, no, I mean, I can answer that. Is like I said, anytime we're doing like septic sewer conversions and things of that nature, I mean, because that requires not just the individual residents, right, but or running and maintaining the sewer plant. Because I mean, when you're, I remember. Oh gosh, even a year and a half ago, we have all these budgets, and we have our preliminary budget that we pass, and it has all the different department heads' needs and some of their wants within that
Right.
budget. And of course, a lot of it's infrastructure and infrastructure repairs and upgrades and so forth. And we have a little bit of buffer for emergencies, but you all watch the news, like you get the alerts on your phone. This sewer line is busted, this infill,
Yeah.
this, that, the whole deal. A contractor ran over it, a county truck had hit a main, a contractor with this or that. And so it's all hands on deck, right?
And none of that's cheap.
None of that is cheap. And so those would be some of the largest ones. And, for example, I have an office off of Olive Road, and you've got a Walgreens there, you've got a Dollar General that is put down the road. I mean, my offices are on septic. It's mind-boggling to me
wow, yeah.
that some of those offices are on septic, and you'll drive in parts of Brownsville, Office of Antes, and so forth, and you're thinking, okay, this is a rural area, or I'm sorry, a suburban area,
Yeah.
and outskirts of maybe the main populace of the city, and they're on septic tanks. So it's amazing. I think I always joke with some of the other board members because we're always allotting money for septic to sewer conversions, and I live I always refer to District 5 as a tale of two cities, because I remember running on the campaign and I'm thinking to myself, what a waste of county and state and federal resources to run this gas. And so they're running gas up 29. You may remember that was a big project, and you've got all this green pipe and they're running this gas, and I'm thinking, and as a private business owner, like the time, I'm thinking, why we have all this mobilization going on? The ground is already opened up. The trenches are dug. Why aren't we running sewer? Why aren't we utilizing this stuff? It'd be a perfect time to run that. And I'm talking at I remember speaking at Jimmy's Grill, great place by the way. Shameless plug for Jimmy's Grill. In Cantonment, and I'm talking about bringing sewer to the north end of the county. I'm like, one of my hot buttons is I want to bring sewer to the county, and oh my gosh, man, I had a bunch of people. We don't want sewer. We don't need sewer. I'm just like, well, but I was just at Scenic Hills talking to the folks over there, and they're like,
The mindset's a lot different out
completely
there.
mindset, which I get it, right? I mean, I live in Molino. I mean, I've got a septic system there. It works well. I've had no issues with it. For me personally, I would have no desire to tie into sewer. But again, Jimmy, the owner of Jimmy's Grill, for example, a business owner, he's all about sewer. So trying to explain that to folks, you guys want you want another Waffle House. You'd love to have a Publix out here. You'd like to have a Chili's to go to, something along those lines.
Do they want that, or do they want it to stay completely
I think
rural?
it's
Some
a mix.
people probably want it
It's
to
younger
stay
folks. I
rural.
mean, it's like
Yeah.
Michelle. It's like any demographics. You got the older folks who
They want
have
it to
one
stay rural,
mindset,
yeah.
and then you got the younger folks that are like, look,
want it to
I would
grow,
love
yeah.
to. I mean, I'm tired of driving into town every day, or I'm
Yeah.
trying to drive here. I'd love to come over here and grab a sandwich. I'd love to see a Chick-fil-A, down the road.
Sound like to me what you're saying is that with the expansion comes infrastructure, and with infrastructure come costs. So you would love to have some things to that particular generation, to that particular group, but that comes at a cost to bring it.
100%. In fact, we were, it's, I was just talking to several county commissioners who, like I said, who I said, prior to the show, have great relationships with. And a lot of people don't understand that because on the private citizen side, they're like, well, look, we want infrastructure. Infrastructure is too much growth. But I'm like, construction pays for infrastructure. It doesn't happen before. I mean, in an ideal world, you have plenty of money. You have a surplus in your bank account, which we do not, ECUA anyway. And I think the county would probably say the same thing, to go ahead and say, excuse me, we know development's coming over here in this area. So we're going to preempt it. We're going to go ahead and run the septic, run the sewer, 3-lane the highway. But where's that money coming from? We get it from the development. We get it from the builder. We get it from the new public shopping center because they're paying for, in part, for the impact fees for that stuff. So it's a constant battle.
Is that because ECUA has to make the initial investment in the infrastructure?
Yeah, so everything starts with us, and to your point, a lot of people aren't really aware of the impact ECUA has on their lives. I certainly didn't. So working in the building industry and the construction industry, I understand the impact they have on business owners' lives and developers' lives and builders' lives for sure. But the average citizen does not, because nothing gets done until it comes to ECUA first, right? Because you have to have water and sewer to it. So you can want to develop and build a world-class facility, but unless you get septic, sewer and water to it, it doesn't happen. So there's a lot of planning, on our end on where we have capacity, what it's going to take to get septic and sewer there. I keep saying septic, sewer and water to those locations. And because again, the growth doesn't happen without it. In the north end of the county, in my end of the county, we're seeing significant growth. I mean, if you haven't been on 97A and off of Quintet lately, going down 29 North, take a ride out there.
I have, and it is growing tremendously.
Hundreds of homes, Lennar Builders.
I grew up out there, and I just don't even recognize it anymore. It's grown up so much.
It is growing. So
it's just subdivision after subdivision. But we're going to take a commercial break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more to Kevin about ECUA and budget and everything else we're talking about. It's very interesting.
Take a trip down memory lane and relive the magic. The legendary Soul Royals Band, Pensacola's own from the 60s and 70s, is hosting their 55th reunion Saturday, June 24th at Pensacola High School Auditorium. This event is for the entire family, featuring live music, singing, and entertainment by former band members. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You don't want to miss this one. Advance tickets are available now. Available online at Eventbrite.com. The Soul Royals Band Reunion. Pacto Snack Shack, 4027 North Davis Highway. And from members of the Soul Royals Band for only $25, $35 at the door. For more info, call 850-341-7633. Relive the magic with one of the greatest bands of the 60s and 70s, the legendary Soul Royals, Saturday, June 24th at Pensacola High School Auditorium.
Great Change Cleaning Service is Pensacola's premier housekeeping service. We specialize in residential, short-term rentals, and small office cleaning. We want to get your home or office fabulously clean at a reasonable price. Call Great Change Cleaning Service so we can set up a time to get your home or office Great Change clean. So, Kevin, I know you've been working with Mike Kohler and the County Commission about fixing some drainage on some of the roads in Pensacola. Which roads are those? Like, what areas of town is that? And how did it come about that you are collaborating with the county? You're taking initiative to collaborate with the county to fix something.
Sure, and so I'll kind of take a helicopter approach to answering that question.
Sure.
So going back to when I was elected, and again, you have to kind of sift through some of the rumors and the exaggerations, but one recurring, I guess, theme I kept hearing on the campaign trail was that ECUA does not have a good working relationship with the Escambia County and the Board of County Commissioners and so forth. And I'm not going to say confrontational because that's an exaggeration, but not the communication could be better.
Yeah.
And so that's something I
They
wanted.
weren't collaborating on things. They were kind of working in their own directions
100%.
and not coming together for the good of the entire
For
community.
the community, which translation costs the community, IES, money.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll bring you a perfect point to that, which I spoke to Mike. I had Mike on like I said, I had Mike on my show last week, and we brought this up about us collaborating more together. Give you a perfect example. There's Olive Road. So East Olive, you've got so the other end of Olive Road has already been 3 lanes, sidewalks,
The lighting,
the lighting has been done,
everything.
lighting, and then as well as we've been able to make some septic sewer conversions there, but nothing on East Olive Road,
Right.
on this end. And I'm like, we got a Tesla. Wait a second, we got a Walgreens here, we got a Dollar General here, we've got a Tesla repair plant at the end. We've got title companies, construction companies on septic, right? And they had surveyors out there. I remember having surveyors out there, and this is Robert Bender's district. And I remember calling him up and saying, "Hey, buddy, I said, you got surveyors out here. Well, we're doing the feasibility studies again on 3 laning, Olive Road." And I said, "Great idea." I mean, long time coming, but great idea. He goes, "We just couldn't get a lot of collaboration from the other business, other owners there." So, nothing on the county or Robert at that stage of the ball game, because you can't make people. I mean, I guess you could do eminent domain, but I'm not going to. Don't get me started on that with ECUA and that whole,
No thanks.
basket of craziness before I came in. But it was the collaboration, and I can remember talking to not just Robert, but other commissioners are saying, it's very frustrating with ECUA because we'll come in and we'll go pave a road and widen a road and put the sidewalks in, and then you guys will come behind and jackhammer it all up and run your, and I said, well, that's just that's an easy. I said, that's just the easy stuff, guys. I said, because that's just communication. We need to have, and we do have representatives that work with the county. We could do a better job. They could certainly do a better job. We could all do a better job. And I think we're working. I think everybody has the mindset to do that. But it's just a matter of getting with ECUA, the county, and saying, hey, here's our projects. Here's what we have slated. Here's what we have money for. And oh, by the way, while we're widening this road and putting in these sidewalks, would you guys like to come along? Because again, we're at this point, we're utilizing resources.
Exactly.
I mean, it makes so much sense. It's just crazy. And then we're running our sewer and water at the same time. Then they're paving it. Then we don't have patches. Then we're not jackhammering stuff up. So
Before ECUA was ECUA, the water utility was run by the county.
Right,
And so,
yes.
So they would have collaborated with themselves and done all the work at one time that was needed, rather than they pave the sidewalks and then ECUA comes in and jackhammers
Right.
the sidewalks. So that's important. That's very, very important. What you're doing is, having ECUA collaborate with the county.
Well, it's just a no-brainer. Like I said,
It
on the
really
private
is.
business, and again, I don't have the benefit of running businesses, off a ratepayer money. So if we're not making money, if it's not efficient, you have margins you have to protect and so forth. So I think that's another benefit I bring is bringing a private business owner a different perspective, who has to manage and maintain budgets, who has to be profitable.
Yeah.
We can't change a bid or a quote once it's been submitted. I can't raise a rate, so we have to be very efficient with that. And again, when it comes to ECUA and or the commission, the good intentions are there. They're just such enormous, as you alluded to, Pichelle, organizations. I mean, things get lost in the shuffle, and I can certainly see it. So, but again, being out there, seeing that, and that's such an easy fix. You know, these projects are slated months or years, years in the future, and so we know way ahead of time that this roadworks, the county knows this roadwork's going to be done. So it allows us to allocate those funds in our budget, which are going to be a huge savings, by the way.
Yeah.
Because again, we can run that septic,
Under the road.
goodness gracious,
Yeah.
sewer for the 100th time, sewer and water, at the same time that's going on,
Yeah.
saving money, saving resources, capitalizing on the mobilization of the contractor that's already there. So those are just some of the
And if FPL wants to bury lines, they should do that while everything's going on at
absolutely.
the same time.
And I had a conversation with Mike
And of
Kohler
course the
about
gas.
this.
Yeah.
Same thing, all of it, all the
Yeah.
utilities. Let's
Yeah.
let's get together. Let's get in a
Everything
room.
needs to work with the county.
It's just challenging, sometimes. And I think, and the other board members are on board with this.
Yeah.
It's just this
Sure.
whole concept, which I learn every day. Sunshine. So
Right.
which we're bound by. So we can't
Yeah.
discuss things that we may or may not vote on. And this is completely on the private sector, and you're a business owner as well, counterproductive because.
It is so common
It's
sense.
the craziest
It
thing.
is so common
Charles,
sense.
it's the craziest thing. I'm just like, we got some smart board members. If they could just put us in the room, I'm like, look, go ahead and put
I
a
know.
camera on us.
Yeah.
I don't care. I've got to not just put your phone on record, but we should be
Yeah.
able to discuss these issues. Again, when I sit down at board meetings at my various companies, I've got excellent staff, managers, engineers, architects, the whole deal. We've got an issue, we've got a challenge. Nothing we can't collaborate on and find a solution on, and we're discussing it. We're coming up with best practices. We come up with a solution,
Yeah.
and then we execute that. Right?
Right.
It's very cumbersome because I can't talk to my board members
I
about
know.
that, and I can't talk to Larry. I can't
Yeah.
talk to Vicky. I can't talk to
I
Lois or Dale.
learned more before I got on the Citizens Advisory Committee because I was able to call the board members and everybody and talk to them. And then after I got on the Citizens Advisory Committee, obviously I was under Sunshine. And people have asked me, why do they have the Sunshine Law? It doesn't make any sense because people do need to collaborate. They need to.
Yeah,
need
you got
to
a
get
congressman who
together and
who's not under that. You have the Senate who's not. I'm just like,
Right.
but we're under that. Now on the flip side of that, I am able to talk to our county commissioners. I'm able to talk to them,
And
so it's
Bruce.
kind of nice. Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Bruce is right. Bruce is like he has many roles. He's also the bridge. He's the
Yes,
conduit, right, between
right.
the other board members. So he has the ability to speak to all of us, kind of get some input, kind of keep it to himself, and then talk to the other board members, and then kind of get a pulse and a sense of where everybody's head is. I get to do some of that. With talking to county commissioners or city council or the mayor, whatever the case may be, to get some collaboration from them because Sunshine doesn't affect us.
Right.
So it's certainly, and I enjoy that. Enjoy talking to Mike about these infrastructure projects, about
Yeah.
these stormwaters, about us communicating with one another, talking to Robert, talking to Lumen, talking to these folks who, again, we're all on the same team. So everybody has they're all moving in the same direction, for the betterment of, like I said, all the constituents. Going back to talking about collaboration, I was working on a project downtown Pensacola, the city, and I'm walking into, I think it's Brad Hinote, the chief engineer's office.
Yeah,
and
I
great
know
guy,
Brad.
by the way.
Yeah.
And we're discussing, and I've got one of the other engineers talking to him. He's like, "Hey, Kevin here's got this project, and he's trying to get done. He's getting some pushback from ECUA, and then of course, Brad, he's very frustrated with ECUA, so he begins to elaborate a little bit on his frustration with a couple of situations with ECUA and
with drainage, I'm sure.
drainage and lack of communication and so
Yeah.
forth. And Robbie's standing next to me, and he smiles. And he's like, "Brad, Kevin is the vice chair of the ECUA."
Right.
His face, Brad's like, "Oh, I apologize. I had no idea." I said,
Yeah.
"No." I said, "Brad,
You needed to
I
hear
need to
it.
hear this."
Yeah.
I
I
need to
said,
hear it, yeah.
"Unfiltered, just
Right. You would have
straight.
had
I
no
want it."
idea
I
what he
said,
was
"So,
really thinking.
please lay it on me. How can we, help?" And it was just like, well, he's like, "Hey, there are times when you guys will come down here and you'll have a project and you'll bust up the road and jackhammer up the road and make a big mess, and we don't get a heads up, we don't get a phone call, and so forth, like we should." And I was like, "Well, look, good news is I can fix that." I said, I can fix that. We can, I mean, I'm assuming we have policies in place already.
I know. I was just thinking that there should be policies
Sure.
in place where if you're going to do anything in the city, that
Correct.
the city needs
and there
to
are,
know.
and again, but it's one of those inspect what you expect situations. So I, gave them my number and said, look, call me, email me if you ever have these issues. Got with Bruce, I addressed it with Bruce,
Yeah.
and he said, Kevin, we should be doing that. Like that's,
Yeah.
I mean, great, and thank you for telling me about that. But again, it was just one of these situations where it's like, yes, this is common sense stuff. Like, obviously emergency situations, I explained to Brad, I said, we can't give you a heads up on that. If a sewer main breaks or a line breaks, well, it's all hands on deck, and that's going to be telling you after the fact, right? Because I got to get the sewage contained.
Sure.
Right. But short of that, if we have a project, we should be letting you know 3, 4, 5 days or as much
Months.
notice as we can, months, to kind of give you a heads up. We don't
so
need
they
any
can
help.
start planning what they're going to do.
Sure,
at the
so
same time.
and that's being a good neighbor.
Sure.
That's just being a good neighbor.
It really is. Here again, it's common sense. And like you say, there are some things such as an emergency you don't have time, but those are rare occasions.
Sure.
And
Yeah, if there's a fire, put the fire out.
Sure.
First.
Notify them later.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
right, but just regular routine stuff that's on the planning board. You may be able to share some things. Anything that's can be shared, you'll let them know. Hey, we're going to be coming through, and
We're going to
Yeah,
jackhammer
and
up
let us-
these sidewalks.
And that's the
you need to
same
know
thing
that.
with, we talk about infrastructure and collaboration. So, we talked a little bit about collaborating with ECUA and the county and ECUA and the city. But, where we definitely fall short at ECUA is collaborating with the private sector. We don't do a good enough job collaborating with the private sector. Because
Like
that's
HOAs and
well, not just HOAs,
Business
private
centers.
developers, builders,
Okay.
developers, whether it be commercial, residential,
Yeah.
collaborating. Because again, case in point, you've got subdivisions, that are being developed, and obviously we want to take advantage of the fact that yes, we've got the private sector with their equipment, their mobilization. Can we utilize that contractor, that building contractor, as he or she is putting in their subdivision? Can we get them to run maybe a little bit more line to tie in a subdivision who may not be on sewer at the time? And we are certainly willing to offset some of those costs. So I think there's better communication we can do there. I think that when we write the specs, so we write the specifications on what type of lift station, what size lift station must be put in for a subdivision.
do we have that? Do we have that communication piece of that job description within ECUA to do that?
So-
Yeah,
Charles, I'll tell you what's all this stuff, what's supposed to happen, right? So what's supposed to happen is builder developer submits their plans for a new subdivision, a new strip mall, whatever the case may be. They have a pre-construction meeting. We have an ECUA representative engineer that goes and meets with the private sector engineer. They flush out the details. At that point, we tell them, you need this size lift station, this type of pipe, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They agree. The builder developer gets their package together and says, okay, we're going to send out estimates. This is what this is going to cost. We're going to go to the bank, get the loan, and go from there. We've had issues in the past where we thought our folks were on board with the private sector. 6 months into it, I would get reports that, hey, ECUA is telling us that they're no longer going to accept this type of pipe or that type of pipe, or this size lift station has to be upgraded, and we don't find this fair because we were told in writing that this is what it's going to do, and we can't get our development order without that. So, talking about some changes, I met with Bruce on that, and I said, Bruce, this is, again, buddy, I work with funding companies and so forth, and banks and finance companies. So when we're submitting a package with what we believe are going to be the costs associated with that, we have to honor that. We have to honor that. And he agreed. I mean, there was no pushback whatsoever. He goes, absolutely. If we will have a policy that what we agree on in that pre-construction meeting, we will adhere to down the pike, because a hot button you're hearing right now, and you hear every politician talk about it, is affordable housing.
Right.
And no one can give you a clear definition. They can tell you a metric or based on income in this area or that income and that sort of thing. This is what's affordable. and I think we can all three agree, what we consider affordable and what someone from California or New York or from a larger metro area is affordable are completely different
Absolutely.
things. And so ECUA is where it all starts. ECUA is where all affordable housing starts. And I don't want to back us into a corner, but when that developer comes in, it based on the cost, infrastructure cost, sewer, water, lift stations, things of that nature, those are factored in on how much those lots are going to be sold for. So the first part of the house, before you ever get to how much it's going to cost to build a house for you, a big part of that is the lot. And so we want to be good neighbors, ECUA. We want to be as efficient as we can. We want to be as fair as we can with the private sector in hopes that the savings or efficiency in some cases or transparency with them will translate to lower cost development, i.e. lower cost lots, which ultimately will be a lower cost or more affordable housing. So it really starts with us, and I kind of explain that to folks. I'm like, and because the builders, there's always this I want to say the tension with between builders, developers, and say ECUA and or the county, whether it be zoning or.
Say if you're into a neighborhood, I know in rural areas, we still putting septic tanks
Sure,
in.
very
But
prevalent.
Say if you're in a populated area where there are tie-ins, so you can tie into that system. Does the owner has a choice to tie in or not to tie in? And,
So
what?
So it's a great question, and something that's really going to be on the forefront as we start getting some of these federal, state grants and other monies to do septic sewer conversions. So we do have programs that can offset some of the costs. So typically, when we're going into a subdivision, and I'm saying, okay, Charles, you were on septic, so we're gonna have you and your wife convert over to sewer now. Well, there's a cost for you involved. I may run it to your street, to your subdivision, whatever the case may be, but you could spend $2,500 to $3,000 to make that connection. So we do have some programs for some folks also that may be disadvantaged or disabled in some way, that may have some economic challenges, financial challenges that may preclude them from being able to tie at the time. So we have several programs to help offset some of that money. We also have a kind of a payment plan that we've worked out where they can break that connection into various payments. But there is cost involved. That's the other behind the scenes. Is like, well, look, you're bringing the sewer here, but now I'm wanting, I'd like to tie. In some cases, like I'd love to tie into it, but I don't have $2,800 just laying in my shoebox.
Right.
So we got programs to help offset that, but again, it's a moving target.
So there's certain PFOAs, I think I'm saying it right, the fire retardant, the fire
Yes,
foam
PFAS, yes.
Yeah, that they spray like at the airport. And
Correct.
But anyway, over the years, and I don't know if they're still using that, but they've changed it. That's good. So, but it has infiltrated into our ground aquifer.
Oh, yes.
And so ECUA has the granular carbon activated filters
Correct.
to filter it out and to make the water safe again. And I think it filters out like 100% of it. Like they do a really good job. But those filters have to be replaced every
Correct.
once in a while. And so those aren't cheap. They're very large, gigantic filters, and they do have to be replaced, and they're very expensive. So how does ECUA plan on changing those out over the
So
years?
we've got tens of millions of dollars that we are going to be responsible. We talk about that $11 million grant, which is like a drop in the bucket. We have tens of millions of dollars, like this kind of dark cloud hanging over our head that we have to come up with, not only to clean up some of these areas that the PFAS has already infiltrated into the soil, but also updating these systems, changing out the filters and so forth. So, bottom line is, certainly we allot percentages of money in our budget each year to account for some of that, but there's shortfalls. I mean, we've got shortfalls right now. I mean, I was looking, I was just speaking to you prior to the show starting that we're doing a feasibility study and an equity study on rates. And so we're trying to do a rate study, and because a lot of folks don't understand is you've got individuals. I use me for example, living in Molino or Barth, I have ECUA garbage, but Molino utilities. So Molino provides my water, right? So they're independent water. But you have some folks that use all of our services: water, sewer, and sanitation, right? And so, but our rates are a mix. Same thing with how we rate the beach and so forth, based on consumption. So we're trying to do an equity study to make sure that everybody's paying a fair rate. But again, the bottom line is they're all blended. There's no way for us to be able to say, okay, you're going to pay this at the beach, you're going to pay this in the north end of the county, you're going to pay this, you're using this service. They're all blended. But when I look at those rate studies and when staff runs over it with us, and they'll project out, 2026, 2028. So we have an idea, and we try to do projections, right? And they're just guesses. They're just guesses based on labor costs now, what labor costs will be, what fuel prices are now. So we try to do projections, but we again, no one likes to talk about rate increases, but based on our projections, if there were no rate increases between now and say 2026, we'd be out of money. I mean, we would be people out
You'd
there
also
with buckets.
be out of the granular carbon activated filters because you wouldn't be able to afford to buy them.
So correct, among many other things. So with labor costs, this is just the reality of where we're at right now. But PFAS is a big issue. In fact, we were reminded about it again in our last board meeting that ladies and gentlemen, this is not going away. It's coming down the pike. We have a deadline, a state and federal mandated deadline to address some of these PFAS concerns, and we're talking it's in the tens of millions of dollars right now. So do we have that much allotted for that to do that now? No, certainly we don't.
But it's an absolute priority.
100% priority.
Because safe drinking water is
Absolutely.
the number one priority as far as the water side of ECUA. And you have to get those contaminants out.
Oh, 100%. And we will. I mean, make no mistake, we're going to get them out.
So it doesn't matter how much it costs. You can't use the water with
correct.
those contaminants.
Correct. You're 100% correct. But again, if your question is, do you all have the money to do that today? The answer is no. We don't have the money to do that today. However, by the time the deadline comes, per se, to where it has to be done, it will be done. We will make it happen. We will obviously we'll continue the maintenance, but again, we've got to find the money. And when one of the ways I was looking at the money was we had the recycling plant on there as well, and what that cost and so forth. And no one looked at the recycling plant as a moneymaker. It never was a moneymaker. It never was. But when I'm looking at stuff and I say, hey, look, I'm all about recycling. I mean, I love my planet as much as you love your planet and the environment and so forth. But we need to look at some real cost of running this facility, and we need to let folks understand that, look, we want to continue recycling. If you want to continue recycling, there's a cost to it. I brought up at the board on Tuesday, again, I keep going back to the private sector because a lot of the money that is generated to run the recycling facility comes from the other divisions, right? Because it doesn't make enough to run itself. And then there's subsidies, and there's other multiple subsidies and so forth. So I brought up to the board, I was like, look, as a private sector business owner, I don't have the benefit of subsidies. I don't get that. I can't create revenue out of thin air. A division is either making money or it's not. But the reality is we need to kind of look at our real numbers with cost and overhead and expenses all associated with that, because that's how I can make a decision. And if a division is not making money or it's not profitable or it's costing money, then I want to be able to go to the residents and say, look, it's a great program, it's a valuable program, but it's going to cost.
My comment is that I'm not. Some of these things that coming down the pike, some of it is government mandated that we may have to pay for it, and then a lot of the other things are just things that we have to do as far as maintenance. And I want to say to the ratepayers, I'm not ratepayers out there. I'm not predicting, but are there any things that the the ratepayers and the end users can do to assist, to be more, to help ECUA?
Charles, I thank you so much for asking that question, because I can tell you one thing definitively going back on the recycling plant. So currently, Escambia County has a 45 to 48% contamination rate, meaning if that recycle, which is supposed to be recycle in your can, right? It has other
hoses,
garbage in it.
grocery bags, plastic grocery
garbage, food, things of that nature. We can't dump it. We can't recycle it. It goes to the dump. So
All of
we
it.
have, and again, I've been around long enough. So have you. When someone tells me 45%, I'm thinking it's 60.
So ECUA doesn't separate the garbage from the recyclables in the recycle can. If there is garbage in that recycle can, it all goes to the dump.
In a lot of cases, yes. I mean, if it's some
Yeah.
minor stuff,
Yeah.
if it's some minor stuff, absolutely. But what's happening is, more likely than not, is you've got folks using the recycling can
As a
as a
garbage
second
can.
garbage can.
Yeah.
So all of that goes,
There's a
all
lot
that's
of
going to the dump.
Airbnbs in Pensacola, and the tourists don't know.
Sure, and it's a ton of stuff. So if we can't get that under control, my fear is the recycling facility, our MRF, is going to be untenable. It's going to be again. We pay less for taking. A lot of folks understand it's not just Escambia County. We take Santa Rosa County, we take Mobile County, we take Baldwin County's recyclables. It all comes to our plant. So I mean, we're literally
Until y'all find a way to separate the garbage out of the recycle can.
well, but that's going to be back to what you were saying, Charles. That's where the consumer comes in. That's where the consumer comes in. We have education, we have commercials, we have flyers, we have. But again, you
We
just
have
got.
shows like this.
But
to
you got
explain.
some folks. That, I mean, let's just call it like it is. You got a lot of folks that are just being lazy.
Yeah.
And you,
that know they shouldn't throw a bag of garbage or into a recycling garden hoses and so forth. They just do it
Grocery
anyways.
and if a person has a question, is a ratepayer, someone has a question, all they have to do, they can go to the website, right?
Correct.
You can
All
pretty
hits
much
from the website. 100%.
recycle what's to do it, and that would help us because the way it look like now, there's still going to be some things that eventually you may have to at least take a look at a
We're
rate
going to let him
increase.
answer that after this commercial break.
Take a trip down memory lane and relive the magic. The legendary Soul Royals Band, Pensacola's own, from the 60s and 70s, is hosting their 55th reunion Saturday, June 24th at Pensacola High School Auditorium. This event is for the entire family, featuring live music, singing, and entertainment by former band members. This is a once-in-a-lifetime event. You don't want to miss this one. Advance tickets are available now. Available online at Eventbrite.com. The Soul Royals Band Reunion. Pactos, Snack Shack, 4027 North Davis Highway. And from members of the Soul Royals Band for only $25, $35 at the door. For more info, call 850-341-7633. Relive the magic with one of the greatest bands of the 60s and 70s, the legendary Soul Royals, Saturday, June 24th at Pensacola High School Auditorium.
So, Kevin, how will people now have their yard debris picked up?
Yes, that's a great question. So you can say you heard it here first, because we're going to be passing. We're going to notify the ratepayers here in the weeks ahead. I think we're going to. And don't quote me on this, because it was literally something we had addressed and voted on last week, but I think June or July, we're still playing with the date, where bulk yard pickup will be done with a phone call. And why did we change that versus just driving down your street once a week like we used to do to pick up bulk waste? Was we were finding, going back to my big hot button, efficiency and saving the ratepayers money, we were driving. I mean, our drivers are telling us they're driving 2, 3, 4 blocks and would make 4 stops. And so it's like, what an inefficient way to implement that
So if
program.
they know exactly what address they're going to,
Oh,
they
yes.
can incorporate their route that day.
Oh, absolutely. They can let us know a week ahead of time, a few days ahead of time before their pickup. Hey, this is Mary Smith, 555, Main Street, and we'll be there to pick that up. And it also gives us an opportunity to educate the ratepayer on, look, make sure the pile's in a 6 by 6 by 6 square.
And
make
call.
Sure, and then we can also say, make sure we can tell them what we're not going to pick up, because nothing is more frustrating for a homeowner, for a ratepayer, to put something else out there that we're not either able or capable of picking up.
Yeah.
So it's really going to give us a lot more consumer contact to say, absolutely, Mr. Smith or Jones, we'll be out there tomorrow to pick that up. And just as a friendly reminder, here are the things that are eligible, here's the things that aren't, and please make sure you have that in the proper size pile.
Educational piece.
Amen.
Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me.
It was great to have you. So
Enjoyed it.
I want to thank our sponsors, Ida Gates Trademark T-shirts, Next Door Real Estate Photography, First National Title Insurance Company, and our guest, Kevin Stevens, for coming on the show today. And I want to thank our viewers for watching this episode of the Thornton Review. We air live every other Thursday at 4 p.m. We hope you'll tune in to our next show. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.